When an enemy comes and he drags you out of your God-given territory, and he makes a mistake of occupying it, the land has been empowered by God to fight its occupants. That is why at some point they investigated, they spied the land, and they came back saying, the land eats up its own inhabitants.
Welcome to Faith Surge channel. Kindly like, share, and subscribe. Shalom.
So when God promises you land, he says, this land is yours. And then you peep into the land, you see but they are already occupants. The people in the land never got the promise. What they got was the land. So their future in that location is not guaranteed. I'm talking of God promising you something today that somebody is already in possession of. The fact that they have it doesn't make it theirs. What makes it theirs is the promise. The promise. No. Okay. All right. I have to let this generation know, because you feel like the world has already been taken over from you. You feel like somehow there is no more space for you. These guys are like Elon Musk, they seem like they've taken over. But the question has to be, did God give them the promise? Or they are simply occupying space? Because whilst you are still a sojourner, coming through the wilderness from the land of captivity, still there is need for people to occupy your land until you arrive. And God will put people in those places without giving them a promise for such places. So you come knowing that with your God-given ability, when you start dispossessing people of their possession, you are not robbing them. Because what you are bringing from the land of captivity is a title deed. You are the rightful owner of the place, of the occupation, of the career. What you got from God was a promise that you will become a force in that space. So whilst you are away, they are allowed to practice. You are following this? Now, sit down. Let me show you something. The difference between a promised land and any other land, both are lands, but the promised one is different in this sense. The promised one is owned. You see, when you stay in a promised land, a land given to you by God, even when you are dispossessed, when it's taken away from you, the person to occupy the land will have to deal with certain forces. Because the promised land is given to the one who got the promise. So you entering into the promised land, that becomes a marriage. Okay? That place is no longer just a place, it's a synergy. It's where power meets. God, the giver of the promise, the one promised, which is you, and the land that was promised. You coming because God's eye is over the land. He says from the beginning of the year until the end, my eye is upon this city. So when God gives you a territory, he is the giver of the promise. You are the receiver of the promise. And the land is the promised one. So when you are in that location now, things work together for good. In such a place, you are in a place that God has ordained for you. Things work out so well. Though you will have challenges, you will have difficulties, but this is what happens. When an enemy comes and he drags you out of your God-given territory, and he makes a mistake of occupying it, The land has been empowered by God to fight its occupants. That is why at some point they investigated, they spied the land, and they came back saying, the land eats up its own inhabitants. The land that we saw, it has inhabitants, but we saw them being eaten up.
Numbers 13:32. The land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof.
Apart from people eating each other, the land, if it's a promised land, and somebody comes and he occupies your promised space, it will weary them down. Whether I know this from experience, if God has given me a space to occupy, even in ministry, and somebody comes and he tries to dispossess me and he occupies, the space will weary that individual. Now, the Bible talks about the land. It eats up its own inhabitants. In as much as the people that we saw, they were giants, but we could see that they are suffering. The land is making them suffer somehow. They are not living a normal life. Why? Because the promised land is waiting for the rightful owners. So they will have to wait until the job is done by the rightful owner. Until your product hits the market. Those that are trying to satisfy the market will always be overwhelmed by the demand. Okay, imagine how many people right now are being eaten up simply because they occupied lands that were never promised them. This is a warning not just to them, but to some of you here, so that you identify your rightful place, where you function with clarity and the occupation doesn't overwhelm you. You don't die simply because of a job. So you have to identify the promised land.